Why is it a good idea to create your own products from scratch? How do you come up with product ideas? And how do you know if those ideas are any good? Keep watching to find out. Today on Ecommerce Heroes, I'll be talking to Travis Marziani, an entrepreneur, internet marketer, and host of the Effective E-commerce podcast. We'll be talking about creating products from scratch, right from coming up with your initial idea to researching the market and, finally, pulling the trigger. This month's video sponsor is ShipBulk, an innovative service that automatically manages and fulfills orders from your online store. So Travis, creating your own products from scratch sounds like a lot of hard work. So why is it a better option than white labeling or drop shipping?
Oh, I could spend 2 hours just on this alone. So there's a lot of reasons why it's better than drop. A lot of people think it's more work, but the number one, let's start why it's better. So with drop shipping and white labeling, you're not adding a ton of value to the world. I like to think about, money in business is all about how much value you can add to the world. So for instance, with drop shipping, you're adding a little bit of value. You're taking a manufacturer and you're connecting them with people. That is a service. With white labeling, you're creating a product that pretty much already exists and like making it look a little bit cooler, making it have a brand. With the method I talk about, like creating a product from scratch, what you're doing is you're finding a niche, you're finding an idea, a product that you have, and creating it out of nothing. So let me give an example to make this more concrete. I have one of my companies, Performance Nut Butter. It's a macadamia, coconut, cashew blended nut butter, super tasty. One of the things that makes it different is it's a premium product. Like most nut butters out there are almond butter, which is great, but this is a step above. But then two, it's marketed towards the performance demographic. So that could be athletes, biohackers, like people that want to have a snack and feel like they're not just eating something like PB&J. They want something that's a little bit more premium. So what I'm doing is giving people this value, and it didn't exist. It's also a blue ocean. I don't know if you've ever heard of the blue ocean strategy. So there's two types of businesses. There's the blue ocean and the red ocean. The red ocean is where there's a lot of sharks in the water and people are tearing people apart, where with this method, what you do is you find a product that you wish existed and you create it. And if you wish it existed, there's probably 1,000 other people at least that would love that product. So that's why it's more valuable. And then as far as it sounds like it'd be a lot harder. And I thought the same thing. It's not, and it depends on how crazy your product is. If you're trying to invent the next electric car, it's probably a little bit more work. But once again, let's use Performance Nut Butter as an example. Everything kind of existed to make that product out there already. So what I did is basically just hired people that already make nut butter. And I said, hey, can we switch this for this and this for this? And then let's do the printing. In fact, when I started, you could start this, and it sounds all gimmicky, but you could start this for pretty much $20, maybe even less. And the reason is because you don't have to launch your product right away. You can do a Kickstarter. You can do an Indiegogo. You can do a crowdfunding campaign. I'm actually working on a project I think we're still kind of keeping secret with my girlfriend right now that we're going to be launching in the next 2 weeks. And we'll have started it. We'll have spent, a few dollars on it by the time we launch. So it won't be that intense. And once again, it's a product that we both wish existed and we're just bringing it to market and no one is doing it currently. So that's why creating a product from scratch is so much better. And we can dive a lot deeper into that.
Okay, and when people come around to sort of that way of thinking and they realise that it might potentially not be as much work as they originally thought, what ways are there to come up with ideas for products to create from scratch?
Yeah, so that's a common really good question I get. And there's a few different ways. And this is what people get stuck with. They're like, well, I can't come up with a good idea. And I'm like, first off, yes, you can. What I would recommend is a few different things. I think not to plug it. I'm sure I have some sheets somewhere or something that talk about, that kind of walk you through. But first off, figure out what your interests are. Figure out what you really like. It's so much easier if it's a product you wish existed. It doesn't have to be. It could be something that your friends wish existed. I'll talk more about that in just a second. But one of my number one tips is just take an inventory. And I wish I had the questions offhand that I usually ask, but take an inventory of like what kind of stuff you're interested in, and then start thinking every day, write down one idea. This is the big tip. Every day before you go to bed or right when you wake up, I think before you go to bed's probably the better one. So like that, before you go to bed, you have to write down one idea. It could be the worst idea in the world. It doesn't matter. Like maybe your idea is to create customized turtles that you sell online for racing. Like, I don't know, like something just, it doesn't matter how good or bad the idea is. But what you'll start to do is as you go throughout your day, you'll notice, oh man, you're searching on Amazon for something and nobody's selling it. You're going down the store and you're like, oh, I really wish this existed in the world so I could, fix this. Some examples of very simple things other than performance nut butter was I worked with someone who created socks that had cool patterns for horse riders. So it's for women, little girls mostly. Most of the socks that existed were just like boring, black, solid colors. So she's like, it'd be really nice if there was something that expressed myself. Another girl I'm working with is creating a product that is autoimmunity is the name of it. So she has an autoimmune disease. So she wanted to create a tea because she created this for herself and it worked for herself. She wanted to create a tea that helps alleviate some of the symptoms of autoimmune disease. Great idea. It's a product. I mean, it's not crazy. There's tea that already exists out there, but branding it as something special, that's different. I could go. Another thing I'm working on. Actually, I'll keep that hush hush for now because that's still a few months out. But there's lots of little things like that don't sound like that big of a deal. But like the autoimmunity, sounds like a super niche market at first, except for when you start thinking about, well, this also has anti-inflammatory properties. And a lot of athletes and a lot of just humans want anti-inflammatory tea. And what makes it really powerful there is because, oh, this tea is so powerful, it's meant for people with autoimmune disease. Well, I just have a little bit of inflammation. Maybe I'll use that. And coming up with ideas is not as hard as you think. You just got to start every day writing down one idea and your brain will start spinning. And I've talked about this on my podcast, I have more ideas than I can possibly use. So if you really can't come up with an idea, anyone listening to this, email me. I will give you an idea or help start a business with you, which I've done for a number of people.
When you have that sort of initial idea, obviously, you like it and you think it's a great idea, but how do you know if other people are going to like that product?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of my process. And I haven't really talked too much about the creating the product process. And there's lots of ways to do it. And, there's not one method that fits all. But the method that I prefer is you create a tribe to start with. You create a following. So that means a few different things. Start an Instagram account. Start posting on there. Start reaching out to people. Comment, liking on other people's photos. Try to see if there's some engagement there. So that's the first step. If you really try on Instagram and there's no engagement, then forget about it. It doesn't have to be Instagram. There's a lot of different ways to do it. The next step is, okay, so then cool. There's a lot of engagement. People are really excited. Next step is one thing I like to do is get people into a Facebook group and start like interacting with them, showing them ideas for the logo, showing them ideas for the product. Maybe it's, designs if you have the socks, or for me, it was designs of the package for performance nut butter, a bunch of different things, seeing how people interact. And then the real key is after you build up and build up an email list at the same time, do all this, really spend some time building this, and then launch it on Kickstarter. And the way to see if it'll work or not is either people give you money or they don't. If people don't give you money, then maybe it's not a good idea. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. Just because you don't make any money off the Kickstarter doesn't mean that your project's doomed. A lot of people, and this is controversial, a lot of people are 100% about, you should test, and if it doesn't work on the test, you should just scrap it and walk away. I say sometimes your gut knows. Like there's been times where people say to me, oh, that's not that good of an idea. But I'm like, no, you can't visualize it yet. Like once you visualize it, once it's done, it's going to blow up. And from my personal opinion, I mean, it's different if you have kids and mortgage, then you know what, you got to be a little bit more careful. But if you're single in your 20s or even early 30s, sometimes if you really believe in something, it's better to go in full force and fail than like be like, oh, Susie down the street said it's not a good idea. My first company, everybody told me it was a bad idea. It was we manufactured and sold dance clothing. And then, I was able to quit my job and replace my income. So testing, sure. And doing the Kickstarter, test it out. The ultimate test is will people give you money for it? But sometimes you got to listen to your gut as well.
sort of slightly related, but kind of taking that a little bit further, how do you know if the market is good? You know, if kind of there is demand for your product, but that it's equally not saturated with other sellers offering exactly the same thing?
Well, so that's the beauty, I think, of this process. It's basically you're creating something that doesn't exist. So how do you know it doesn't exist? You search on Amazon. You know, maybe you do a Google search. Honestly, at that point, if it doesn't show up for either one of those, whoever your competitor, if you do, you might, there might be competitors out there, but they're so bad. In fact, when I launched Performance Nut Butter, there was a competitor, but their branding and packaging and marketing and everything was so terrible, I didn't even consider them a competitor. Now, you know, funny enough, they ended up getting some investment and they upgraded their packaging, they upgraded their marketing, they upgraded everything. But honestly, my barometer is if I'm looking for it and I can't find it, it doesn't exist. Even if it does exist, even if there's some, you know, couple out in Montana that's selling it online and they don't know what SEO is and they don't know how to run marketing, I don't care about that. If I can't find it easily on Amazon, or, you know, there is some cases where maybe even if you can kind of find it on Amazon, but their pictures suck and they just aren't taking it that seriously, then it would still work. You're still, in my opinion, creating a product from scratch. To me, what I hate to see is the people that take a generic, you know, BS product. They take supplements, let's say fish oil, and they just slap a different brand on it. You're not adding enough value to the world. Like, why would someone give you money? And some of this will work right now, you know. And I don't think people can make a ton of money off drop shipping or Amazon white labeling, but it's really you're taking advantage of an interesting time that we're at. That's not going to last forever. What I'm talking about here with creating a product is what every major company does. You look at Nike. They created shoes at first. They weren't this giant brand. Apple, they created a computer. I mean, pretty much anything you buy in the store, any product you buy, they created something from scratch at some point. Now, there is times where maybe there's a product that exists and you just want to make it better. So maybe well, I mean, even with Performance Nut or the socks, the socks is a good example for the horse riding socks. Yeah, there already were socks. Like, this wasn't this revolutionary thing, but it was this idea of adding cool patterns, which makes it so much more of a premium. So that's the other thing I would say as far as, is it a good market? Is your product going to be the premium? Is it the best product out there? Don't try to compete in price unless you have a few $1 million to $1 billion to spend. It's not, you're not going to be the cheapest product out there. I would never be the cheapest nut butter. In fact, I'm the most expensive nut butter, and that's what makes me special. I want people to be like, whoa, that is the best thing out there. So is your niche good? I mean, I could probably keep going on this. I'll end with this. Are they willing to give you money? Are they a premium market? Don't go for, it's a lot of common sense. Like, don't go for, you know, people that don't have money to spend. But if you're scratching your own itch, if this is a product you would spend the money for, you know the market exists because you're it. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, and when you've done obviously different sorts of research, when you've worked out what your product idea is, whether people like it, and assessed the market, at what point do you know when you've done enough research and it's sort of time to pull the trigger and go into the design work and the setup and the marketing?
You don't know. I mean, that's the honest answer is you have no idea, and you're never gonna, like, I could give you a bunch of BS answers, but like at a certain point you just have to pull the trigger. I mean, I can give you if you do the method I talked about, like Instagram to Facebook, people are starting to get really excited about it. Like, once you can feel that energy of like people are excited, it's also a matter of, are you ready to do it or not? Like, do you have the time and all that kind of stuff? But ultimately, you could keep, it's like a soda bottle, you know, or a champagne bottle, even better. Let's use a champagne bottle. If you don't add to the pre-launch sequence, which is getting emails, Facebook group, all this kind of stuff, it's like trying to, you know, pop a flat champagne bottle. But the more you do that, the more you start shaking it up. And the difference with the champagne bottle is eventually there's only so much you can shake it up. But with this, it's like you can kind of keep going. And actually, let me take that back. There might be a point where people start to get annoyed. It's like, hey, it's been 3 years. Like, just release it already. I'm sure there is. But the truth is, you kind of just feel it, and you just got to kind of go with it. I mean, I can give you numbers of like, get 1,000 people in your email list or this or that, but it also depends what your goals are. If your goal is to launch a product that you need to raise $100,000, it's very different than launching a product like, oh, I'm about to launch a product that if we raise $2,000, that's enough. And I want to add that to it. Using the Kickstarter method, which you don't have to do. You can go straight to Amazon. If you have the money, in fact, that might be more powerful if you have the money, because then you create this really big snowball on Amazon. But I would say if you don't have the money, use the Kickstarter method. And so for me, we have a product idea. And if we can raise $2,000, it's a good enough idea that I say, hey, I'll put $2,000 of my own money into it, because to start it up will be right around 4,000 or 5,000. So I figure, all right, as long as we can hit the 2,000 mark, I don't mind putting an extra two. Same thing, performance nut butter. My goal was to hit, it was to hit 10,000. I raised 15,000, but my first production run was closer to 25,000. But I had 10,000 saved up, and I'm like, I'll put this in there gladly. But if I would have only raised 5,000, I would have went back to the drawing board and maybe relaunched the same product with some tweaks, or maybe start from scratch.
Okay, well, Travis, my final question for you is, what are your Ecommerce Heroes top 3 tips for sellers who are looking to create their own products from scratch?
Sure. Okay. So now I'm starting to have different tips, but I'll tell you the first 3 that came to mind. So the first thing is build a tribe. No matter what you're doing, you have to build a tribe. Kevin Kelly had an article about 1,000 true fans. And the idea of this was, if you had 1,000 raving fans, people that just loved what you do, it doesn't matter if you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you're a product creator, it doesn't matter what you do. If you have 1,000 people that love what you do or your brand does so much that they're willing to give you $100 a year for new products, which isn't a ton. Like, I've spent over $100 with a lot of different brands. $100 a year, all you need is 1,000 people, and you have $100,000. Now, what's even more impactful about this is those 1,000 people, they're really raving fans. They'll go out and they'll do the work for you. They'll tell other people. They'll take photos of your product if you are doing a product, post it on Instagram. And that's what you want to think about. And I think I'll add to this. So the part of the build the tribe is really like niching down and getting those. Don't try to create a product for everybody. If your product is for everyone, which a lot of people want to do, then no one's going to buy it. The Immunity, that company I've been helping out, perfect example. If they said, well, we want to just do like a general like wellness tea, good luck. There's 1,000 of them out there. You're not really reaching anybody. But when you say, hey, it's an autoimmune helping alleviating symptoms tea, what that says to me is, wow, if I have an autoimmune disease and I drink tea, I need to try this. And you know what? If it's really good, I might share it with my son, my brother, my whatever, and like let them try it, and maybe it'll help them out too when they know about the anti-inflammatory process. So niche down and build a tribe. Get your 1,000 true fans. So that's number 1, even though that's like 3 things in there. Number 2, you really want to brand it. You don't want to just have some generic white label feel to it, and make it personal. So Performance Nut Butter, it was about my story. It was about me. Autoimmunity, it's about the owner of her stuff. The socks, it talks, she rides horses, and she can tell her story of how, as a little kid, she always wanted this, and then it was created. And, with that story, what she's trying to do is connect with moms. She's trying to connect with moms and say, hey, your daughter's going to love this. So you're going to want to brand it and make it as personal as possible. People don't care about giant brands. In fact, a lot of times they hate them. Look at Walmart. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar. Like Walmart is like this giant company, but everybody hates them because of that. But people kind of like Sam Walton, even though like if you know a little bit about Sam Walton, which almost nobody does, but like in the entrepreneur community, he's like, oh, he's kind of a cool guy. But most people don't know about his story, don't know about him. I still haven't even read the book, and I want to read that book. Apple, people even sometimes have mixed feelings. Okay, actually, a good one is Google versus Apple. Sometimes people like Google, but they kind of feel a little weird. But if they understood the founders and the creation story and all this, they'd probably like it more. People are a little bit more attracted to Apple because of Steve Jobs and all that kind of stuff. But usually you don't really trust companies, you trust people. So that's my number 2 tip. And finally, number 3, just do it. Just launch. Like, create something, try. It kills me, the amount of people that want to consult with me and this and that, and they just don't want to jump in. That's the only way you learn. It's literally like trying to learn how to swim without ever getting into the water. It's like, yeah, you can read some books, you can get some instruction, but really, if you want to swim, the first step should be getting in the water and feeling it, moving around. Then you can hire a coach. You read about it. And maybe I'm not saying don't read about it. Same thing with swimming. It's like read about it a little bit to understand the basic mechanics, but you got to get in the water like ASAP. So even if that means whatever stage you're at, do the next step. If you don't even have an idea, start writing down an idea a day for at least the next 30 days. And if you can't commit to writing one idea down a day for the next 30 days, you're not serious. You don't want to make money, to be honest, online. And then once you do that, if you have an idea, if you can't commit to making an Instagram and commenting and liking on at least one other person's photo a day, you're not serious. You don't want to make money. And once you've done that, if you can't move them on the next step of the funnel, bring them to a launch group, once again, you're not serious. And then after that, if you can't help get it started, create a Kickstarter and launch it, you're not serious. And it's every little step along the way is super easy, but people want to look at the big picture and say, wow, starting something from nothing is hard. It's like, no, don't just take the next little step. So just get started with whatever the tiniest next baby step is, and you'll be good. So the last thing is, if you enjoyed everything I talked about here, check out the YouTube channel. It's Travis Marziani. Every Tuesday, I release a tactic-filled video, none of the fluff, none of the watch me drive my Ferrari stuff. Actually, how can you launch and build a real business? And then I also have the Effective E-commerce podcast, which the first 40 plus episodes are a straight A to Z tutorial. So if you really are still stuck, like I start with episode number 1 where I go into way more detail on how to come up with an idea. And then episode number 2 is just everyone builds upon itself. So check out both of those. But other than that, that's it. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, Travis, thank you very much for joining us. I think there's some great tips for our viewers there. I'd like to say another big thank you to this month's video sponsor, ShipBob, an innovative service that can automatically manage and fulfill orders from your online store. All that's left to say is thank you to everyone for watching, and we'll see you for another episode of E-Commerce Heroes here at Web Retailer.